the no-till kind of appealed to me, and trying to improve our soil health. You know, we're seeing here the yields after continuous ploughing, no real break crop in the past, that the soil was just depleting and we weren't getting the yields, and especially in a year like this year that's quite dry and crops maybe are coming under pressure.
There are many types of establishment systems being practiced in Ireland at the moment, and all of these systems have positives and negatives. The divergence in these systems is generally when conditions are less than ideal. How will one system perform in wet conditions, or will crops established in one system stand up to drought better than crops established in another system? You are listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We would really appreciate it if you could listen, follow and give us a review on Apple or Spotify, or for wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on the road again this week visiting Eoin Lyons, who is farming just outside Ballyragget, County Kilkenny. Eoin is using a direct drill system to establish crops on his farm and grows a range of crops from cereals, oilseed rape and fodder beet. Eoin is not unlike many farmers in his battle to keep grass weeds under control in his system. Before we got to the grass weed issue, I first asked Eoin how crops are looking in the very dry conditions.
I'd say surprisingly well, considering the soil types that we're on. So some of the different soil types here will be quite sandy, and of course you're going to run into issues if you get a prolonged dry spell, but in fairness they seem to be holding their own at the moment anyway. But I think it hasn't got overly hot here. Maybe that kind of wind maybe is kind of keeping things maybe that bit cooler, and it's just keeping crops going. But I think they definitely need rain soon anyway, that's for sure.
And do you have depth of soil in terms of, you're saying it's sandy, but is there any depth underneath it to try and the roots get down there to try and keep it going that bit better?
There wouldn't be really, but again, the soil is very variable around here, so it would be some soils away from the home place here that would be quite deep kind of soils, but around here you get sand very quick and then you're into stone, and there's very little depth of soil there to keep things going.
Okay, so you're in a zero till or no till type situation. Do you think that's maybe cushioning you a little bit in comparison to your neighbours out there? Is trapping a bit more moisture, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we'll be hoping for anyway. Maybe we're not far enough down the road of no-till here on the farm, considering that it is still quite new here on the farm as the way we're establishing our crops. But definitely going forward, bringing in our break crops, our cover crops, and keeping sort of a soil cover there all throughout the year. That's what we definitely would hope, that moisture retention would be that bit better. And it seems to be the way the seasons are going that that is going to become more important as in the future, I'd say.
And you might describe the type of no-till system that you have. It's a disc type system, is it?
Yeah, so it's a John Deere drill, which is a disc drill. So I suppose it's ultra low disturbance in a way. And so really the system here is we're growing in a break crop rotation with either beans or oilseed rape, and then we're following then. Initially it was all going to be a winter crop rotation, but we have brought in spring crops into the rotation now as well, including spring barley, and using cover crops being very important then as well. So we're coming in, we're direct drilling straight in after our break crop with the drill, usually winter wheat or maybe winter barley if we are on them really dry type soils, because wheat won't perform. We usually come back then with a winter oats, followed by a winter barley, and then back then to spring barley. And then depending on the soil type, then it'll be either winter rape or spring beans. So, again, going back to the soil type, the beans just don't suit some of the soils here, and that's why we go with it.
And everything direct in, so between the major crops, between harvest and the next major crop going in, you're trying your best to put a cover crop in the middle, and that's the only cultivation. It's a direct drill, only cultivation you're going to get, is it?
Look, again, going back to when we started, that was definitely the approach, that there would be nothing, only the cover crop was going to do your work for you as regards your soil conditioning, and then direct drill then in with the drill. But I suppose we've seen that maybe every year you don't get away with that, and there is definitely some scenarios where you might just have to go in with either a grubber or a disc or something, just to work soil. If you didn't, with a spring crop, it's going to be that bit more harder to establish your crop. Or if you didn't get the weather conditions and at around sowing time, and you just needed to go in with something, that you have to be maybe that bit flexible, that if you have to do that, you have to do that. And I think that's the way, you have to grow a good crop anyway, and you have to be that bit flexible, I think.
And when you mention around that harvest time, it would be tricky. Do you think your system gives you less or more of a window in comparison to, say, maybe your neighbours in a plough-based system? Or maybe even over time, is it given, as the soils are changing into your system, is it allowing you to get in that little bit later or in that slightly trickier conditions than you might like?
Well, going back to what you said first, I think it definitely closes the window that bit. Maybe that flexibility is not there, and definitely we would be going that bit earlier with our winter crops, because if you get that bit later in the season, it can be very tricky to get your crop in. And if we saw that in 2019, I think was the real wet autumn, and there was winter wheat to go in here, it was getting towards the end of October, and that was the first chance before we got I suppose a break in the weather that year to get in. But the wheat just didn't perform all year because the soil just wasn't right at the time of sowing, and we'll be as well off just wait and not put anything in and wait till the springtime to drill. And that's what actually happened in autumn just gone in 22 as well. We had that wet autumn. We got our winter barley and our wheat sown early, so there was sown before I think it was around the 3rd or 4th of October we were finished. The winter oats were due to go in then, but then the weather broke, so we just held off and sowed the oats in the spring. And I think, again, you have to be that bit flexible. You can't kind of force something. Whereas if you're in a plough-based system, maybe you go in with the plough and plough up a field and sow directly after it. But I suppose you are that bit more limited in the directional system, and you have to be willing to drill when the soil is right rather than when you want to, I suppose.
Okay. And from the point of view, you're in the system now a number of years. When everything goes right, are the yields in your system comparable to what you would have had in the past, or better maybe?
I wouldn't say they're better, but they're definitely up there compared to what we were at. When we started out, I suppose we didn't go straight in with the whole farm into directional. We were coming in after break crops in order to make sure that we had the soil kind of right before we were starting changing to a whole new system. So we were seeing, after the break crop, going in directional in the right conditions, we definitely were very close to matching our yields. The first field that we drilled here is now on its 5th year direct drill, and really I can see no difference when it comes to yield on that or crop performance. So very, very happy the way it's going.
Okay. And you went down to direct drill instead of min-till. Why did you make that decision to go the whole hog, if you like, rather than the halfway house?
Yeah, look, I suppose we were ploughing up until 2018, and it was a massive step to go direct from plough straight to no-till and kind of skip the bit in the middle of no-till. But I just found that, I suppose the no-till kind of appealed to me, and trying to improve our soil health. We were seeing here the yields after continuous ploughing, no real break crop in the past, that the soil was just depleting and we weren't getting the yields. And especially in a year like this year that's quite dry and crops maybe are coming under pressure, you could see that the crops are really struggling because the soil just wasn't good enough to keep the crop growing. And that's really, soil health was number one, and I saw direct drill as maybe being the way in order to improve our soil the best way we could, I suppose.
Okay. And over time, people talk about, if you change your establishment system, you're going to change the weed profile in your ground. Have you seen that bit of a switch and a bit of a change?
There is a bit of a change, I suppose. Look, when we went into the DCT project, it was because of a reason, because we had a very bad brome problem. I wouldn't say it has got any worse because we're not ploughing. But then again, it's not, I say, direct drill that's maybe doing that. When we were back ploughing and we had the bad brome problem, I suppose, first of all, we weren't as aware of the grass weed problem. But then again, there was no rotation there either to try and take out to get different chemistry out to try and take out the grass weed problem. So it's a combination of everything coming together has improved that. I suppose different weeds that were there, there's quite a bit more willow herb, I'd say, coming through from that non-disturbance of the soil. But really, look, I wouldn't say that we have any great more problems by going down the direct drill route compared to when we were ploughing. But as I said, it's a combination of everything coming together is improving.
And are you seeing any of the more perennial kind of weeds, the likes of thistles you can often see coming into the system, or you can often see maybe encroachment a little bit from some of the other kind of broadleaf, kind of hedge type weeds coming out from the headlands? Are you seeing any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we've seen in Dialseed rape, there's quite a few thistles in it there this year, and also a bit of hedge mustard like that coming out from the margins. So yeah, there is bits like that, but if someone asked me, would you be put off no-till because of the extra weed pressure? Absolutely not. I don't think there's anything to be afraid of from that point of view. But you need to keep on top of things, I suppose.
So as you mentioned, you mentioned grass weeds, and you said it's maybe not that much different. Is the spend different now in terms of herbicides for the grass weeds, or is it around the same what you were doing before but better results? Maybe that you know more about it.
I'd say definitely more, but definitely better results. I think that's the way I put it. But it all comes back to awareness, I think, of what you have and how to treat it. Up before going into the ECT project, the awareness, I think, wasn't there at all. There was weeds there in the crops this time of year, but I don't think you put much emphasis on it. So definitely, I think that the the cost, the expense on herbicides has gone up, but the results have improved also.
So within your system, then you're not that terribly worried, from what I'm getting about you, in terms of the overall weed build up. If your combination of your better knowledge, rotations, all those kind of things combined together, are well able to cope with the new establishment system.
I think so, but again, it's like as part of the program there again, like when we started direction in 18, I still don't think that we had maybe the awareness we have now of the brome problem that we had, and maybe neglected it a bit, and that meant we had to go back to ploughing for 1 year in order to try and, I suppose, reset the thing and go back and try and get the problem under control, and that has worked. But since then, I think we have got that better awareness, control measures. If we have to put in a stale seedbed, that's what we'll do. If we have to look at different crops, maybe like there's rape in the field where the project was happening this year. Now it's quite a sandy type soil, so generally we'd keep wheat away from it because it's hard to get the performance, but we'll probably go with wheat in that to try and get our better herbicides out there compared to barley, in order to make sure that we have the problem under control. So I think you just have to be that bit flexible.
And you mentioned an example from last autumn, which was tricky enough now, and if we can remember back, beautiful weather up as far as the ploughing. Third day of the ploughing started raining, and it just was pretty tricky weather from there on in. Have you shifted your winter planting a couple of weeks earlier than you would have in the past? And I suppose maybe are you missing out on winter crops, which are probably the more higher yield and better margin crops?
Definitely the winter crop zone has come forward. So look, I'd be aiming to nearly have all my crops drilled by hopefully the 4th or 5th of October in the winter, and have everything done. And this year we started drilling wheat there it was the 25th of September. And are you going to potentially run into other problems with aphids, maybe disease pressure down the road potentially? But I think it's a system that, as I said at the start, it's just not forgiving at all when it comes to establishing your crop. And number one priority, I think, is get the crop established, and then maybe try and worry about the other issues then. Because if you don't get the crop established, you are under real pressure. But I think, once you get kind of 2-3 leaves on a plant and get it to that stage, it'll nearly go on and it'll be fine. But if you don't get it to that stage, the weather comes wet, or you sow it in not right conditions, the soil is not correct for you, then you're just going to you'll be fighting a losing battle all the way.
And is the same true for the spring, that you have to go that little bit later, or are you adjusting it in terms of, rather being totally direct, it's a bit more of a cultivation in the middle of it?
Yeah, so look, I suppose the spring barley, again, when we started, direct drilling spring barley was out. It wasn't going to be in the rotation. But I think the benefits of spring barley, firstly from our grass weed control point of view, and secondly getting a good cover crop in the middle. So you're getting a cover crop over the winter period and that's going back into the soil then as well. So you have 2 big benefits there, spring barley. The big downside, we're finding extremely hard to try and direct drill it without some bit of cultivation in the middle. And really, the time that you'd have to wait to try and let the soil dry out after the cover crop and get your spring barley in, you're losing valuable time there, I think, in the growth of spring barley, considering that it's such a sprinter of a crop. And especially, the barley we're growing here is malted barley as well. So it's even more important, I suppose, to get the crop in early to try and get our proteins right. So look, the way we've adjusted the spring barley, we're still going with our good cover crop. We're still trying to keep disturbance to a minimum, but really, it's nearly vital there that we're putting a disc through that cover crop in order just to get some soil tillage there, to get some mineralisation going first, and also get the soil to dry out. And it's really benefiting the spring barley, I think, in the establishment and the crop we're producing.
You might just describe the process from harvest to planting your cover crops, all the way back around to your spring crops, in terms of what you put in, what sort of mixes you putting in, how you destroy the cover crop, and how you mulch it in, or whatever you do with it after that.
So I suppose for a spring crop point of view, I suppose there's no one rule, I suppose, for every situation. But look, I suppose to take a situation from this year, we have winter barley down here at the end of the farm. There's quite a bit of brome coming back in it again. The spring barley is going back in there. So my plan will be to go straight in after the crop is cut, try and establish a stale seedbed, take that out then with glyphosate, and then drill my cover crop then before the end of August, hopefully. So the cover crop will grow on. I suppose what I'll pick for that, so on the home farm here, we're in the oilseed rape rotation, so we're trying to stay away from the brassicas. So a one that I like, especially if you're getting in, I suppose, early enough with a cover crop, is sort of the old Facelia mix, or Facelia in the mix anyway, and maybe put in vetches there as well, and try and stay away, as I said, from them brassicas. Look, we let that grow on then as much as we could, and I suppose when it comes to the springtime, that's when it's tricky to know what to do. So on one hand, we want to leave our cover crop there as long as we can from a soil point of view, to keep the soil alive, to keep something growing in the soil. But then on the flip side of that, we're going in with spring barley. Okay, we're going to maybe have BYDV pressure, we're going to have maybe disease pressure. So we want to try and take out as many maybe volunteers that might be hanging around in order to try and get rid of that green bridge.
Do you do that in the autumn time, or do you just try and get rid of it 6 weeks before your plant?
Just try and get the 6 weeks before we plant, yeah. So look, if a planting date here, this year we planted the spring barley, it was the 8th of April when we planted it, which would be quite late for this type of soil. We'd usually like to be getting in, around Patrick's Day, and usually we would get in, there'd be no issue getting in. So look, around the 1st of February, I'd come in with glyphosate, take out my cover crop, and then, I'd go and then I disc it then, as I said, to establish the crop. If I was going total no-till, I don't know would you get away with that. If you're taking out your cover crop, you're going total no-till, you're going to lose 6 weeks there potentially that of friability in the soil. And if the weather came very wet during that 6 week period, it might be even more tricky to try and no-till that crop. So I do think, spring barley is the one crop. I do think it just needs some bit of soil cultivation prior to sowing the crop in order to make sure that you're maximising your yield.
So you put glyphosate onto it around, say, the 1st of February, give or take. Do you wait 4 weeks or 5 weeks before you disc it, or is it discing a few days before you're trying to plant the next crop?
Usually it's a day or two before I go and put in my spring barley. So I leave it as long as I can, and then I go in and disc. So really the disc is just, I suppose, just to dry out that top layer enough, in order to get the soil conditions good enough to plant.
And discing down to 1 inch, 2 inches, shallow enough?
2 inches, 2 to 3 inches, about it. Really, it's still the cover crop that you're relying on to do your cultivation for you. It's not an implement.
Have you ever chance putting in a direct drill into a lay ground?
I have, yeah. So I actually did winter wheat, not on our own farm, but for someone else. Autumn last year, it worked out excellently well. Again, early sowing. And this year we tried again. So I had a lay field here that we took on, that we leased in this year, and we actually went in and direct drilled spring oats into it. Okay, so I suppose firstly it was later than we liked. I suppose we let the dry weather go in February, early March, thinking that obviously, like a lot of people, that it wasn't going to stay broken for as long as it did. So really it was mid-April before we got back in, before that soil was dry enough in order to direct drill. So I just took out the lay 2 days before with glyphosate, and then went in and direct drilled straight in, and the establishment has been very good. But again, it was a good lay, it was well looked after soil, so that has really stood to the crop now.
Okay, and it's looking well now at the moment?
Yeah, looking lovely, yeah.
Excellent. Well, what about the rest of your crops out there? The spring crops, were some of them sown that bit later? Are they struggling a bit at the moment, the same as most crops, or what were they?
Yeah, look, spring barley is struggling. It definitely is. It's on dry soil here. I said it was sown around Easter weekend there, so later than we like for the dry soils here. And you can see, look, I suppose up until this week it was probably not too bad, but you can see the stress coming in it now, and it's shooting out there now, and really it's early enough for that considering when it was sown. Beans again, they're struggling a bit as well. But there's plenty of flowers on it there, so hopefully if a bit of rain come,
They need water though.
they need water. When it comes to the winter crops, I don't think the winter crops are too bad in general. The winter rape has had a fairly okay season all year. The winter barley, I suppose when you're looking at it, the wet March probably didn't suit it, and it maybe is slightly bit thin, but the grain fill has been excellent from considering this weather, and it's not looking too bad. And similarly to the wheat, I'm very impressed with the wheat, and I think there's good potential there. But again, I suppose how long is it going to stay going if it doesn't get a drop of rain? That's the thing.
If we're in a drought situation where we're 60 or 70 mil deficit now, it's I suppose getting serious, especially where there's little reserves in soils anyway.
That's it, yeah.
I presume your disease control you're well on top of that. There's no great disease kicking around, or is there anything?
No great disease. So on the wheat, we actually took a decision not to put on T2 on it because the septoria was very low in the canopy, so we had the T1 on. The septoria, as I said, was low in the canopy, then the dry spell came, so we actually decided to leave it out altogether. What we'll decide from here, we'll see what the weather does, and we'll go from there. Winter barley, similar story. You can see the ramillaria coming into the winter barley now, but I suppose that's, you're not that far out from harvest now, so it's going to happen. On spring barley, so we're growing Planet Spring Barley for malt because it's the variety we were given, but you can see the net blotch coming nicely through on the crop, which I suppose is not great for the variety going forward, considering it's been such a low disease pressure year. But all in all, I think disease pressure has been low, but you'd expect that considering the way the weather has been.
Owen, listen, thanks very much. Delighted to be down on the farm. We'll go for a little bit of a walk now, but delighted to chat to you there this morning.
Okay, thanks, Michael.
So that's it for this week, and my thanks to Owen for joining me on the show. The Teagasc Crops Research is having its biannual open day in Oak Park again this year. The theme of the event is crops and cover crop cultivations, and will be held on Wednesday, June the 21st. There is something for everyone on the day, from excellent research plots to new areas of development, machinery demonstrations, information on the environment, and also a very interesting demonstration of the latest high-tech machinery working on weed control, which may become more important in the future. I would really encourage everyone to try and attend and have a look at this demonstration. Finally, don't forget, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague, and as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.